Hey there folks, you're tuned into S News, where we bring you the latest updates from around the world. If you want to stay informed and never miss a beat, go ahead and follow S News, and make sure to watch this and all our future videos. And don't forget to support us by subscribing, liking and dropping a comment below. Your support really helps us keep going. Thanks for being here. Breaking Houthis fire ballistic missile towards Israel, Trump shockingly announces that Hamas is killing itself.
A new wave of clashes is pushing the entire Middle East into high alert. From the West Bank to Tehran, from Damascus to Ifits, the region is on edge.
Major powers are taking action, and Washington has started responding. Suddenly, a missile was launched directly toward Israeli territory, setting off alarms across the Dead Sea region and the West Bank, a clear signal that a new front could be opening.
Former US President Donald Trump declared that Hamas chose death over peace as a wide anti-terror campaign unfolds.
Iran fears Israel may strike back with air raids, especially now that the US is trying to de-escalate after halting its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, raising concerns about a potential preemptive strike at any time. Meanwhile, nuclear talks between Iran and Europe in Istanbul ended with tensions still running high and no clear resolution.
At the same time, the US has increased its involvement in Syria. There's a reported plan to change the regime in Damascus, possibly handing over control of the city of Sueda to forces loyal to Israel.
Unexpectedly, France recognized the state of Palestine, sparking strong objections from the US, while Israel angrily warned that this move could be disastrous. Here's a breakdown of what's happening. The Houthis fired a ballistic missile at Israel, triggering alarms in the West Bank and Dead Sea region. The Israeli military said it was launched by Iran-backed rebels in Yan and was intercepted by air defense systems. No injuries or damage were reported, but the attack caused panic in some southern West Bank settlements and communities near the Dead Sea.
The Houthis claimed responsibility, saying they targeted a sensitive site in the Beersheba area, tens of kilometers from where the alarms went off. This was the second missile attack by Hezbollah on Israel in the last 3 days. A missile launched earlier missed Israeli territory and didn't trigger alerts.
In response, Israeli drones struck the Houthi-controlled Hodeidah port in Yemen, saying they destroyed key military infrastructure. Monday's airstrike was Israel's 13th strike on Yemen, nearly 1,800 kilometers away, in response to continued Houthi attacks.
They want to die. They don't want a deal. They left the negotiating table. Regarding Gaza, Trump doubled down on blaming Hamas, saying, Hamas doesn't want a ceasefire, they want death.
This came after the United States and Israel pulled their negotiators from indirect ceasefire talks with Hamas in Doha.
They know what will happen if we get them back. That's why they're stalling. There are only a few left. We've saved a lot of hostages. Trump added that Hamas refuses to release the remaining hostages because that would mean giving up their main bargaining chip.
The Hamas official also accused the envoy of simply serving Israel's interests. Trump's envoy, Steve Rapp, accused Hamas of not negotiating in good faith, while a senior Hamas figure claimed the U.S. envoy backed out of agreed terms.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said Israel is working with the United States to explore other ways to bring the hostages home, end Hamas rule, and achieve lasting peace.
The United States said it's considering other options but hasn't provided details.
On the humanitarian front, the situation in Gaza is getting worse. Over 100 human rights and aid organizations warned of famine across the region.
The United Nations says 1 in every 5 children in Gaza's largest cities suffers from malnutrition.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the global silence a moral crisis. A joint statement from France and Germany urged Israel to immediately lift restrictions on emergency aid so humanitarian groups can help.
Israel denied responsibility for the worsening crisis, but the World Health Organization called it man-made.
Israel had cut off Gaza aid in March, eased it 2 months later, but bypassed the UN-led distribution system and used its own aid fund, backed by Washington and Tel Aviv.
Aid groups refused to cooperate with the Israeli military, accusing it of using humanitarian aid for military purposes.
Iran has eased its stance and agreed to resume cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, fearing new attacks by Israel and the United States.
According to the Wall Street Journal, this move could expose parts of Iran's nuclear infrastructure that survived recent bombings and pave the way for future diplomatic deals to limit Tehran's nuclear ambitions.
Iran will host an IAEA delegation soon. Foreign Minister Kazem Gharadadi, a key negotiator with the United States, said the upcoming meeting will explore options for inspectors to continue monitoring key sites like Fordo and Natanz.
This comes after several strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in June 2025, which forced Tehran to rethink its position.
Experts say Iran may be trying to de-escalate and avoid more military conflict, especially amid tense ceasefire talks brokered by its allies.
Trump earlier said he was ready to launch a new military campaign against Iran after a vast secret nuclear site was discovered in Zanjan province. On May 25th, Iranian officials and representatives from the EU3, Britain, France and Germany wrapped up a second round of nuclear talks in Istanbul. Iranian representatives described the discussions as serious, with both sides agreeing to keep consulting in the future. The talks took place at Iran's consulate and lasted about 3 hours. Afterward, Iran's deputy foreign minister posted on social media calling the talks productive and detailed. Topics on the table included sanctions relief and Iran's nuclear program. However, Iran sharply criticized Europe's threat to automatically reimpose United Nations sanctions if no deal is reached by the end of August.
The European side is really focused on keeping diplomatic channels open, but there's a lot of frustration over the possibility of sanctions snapping back. Both sides, though, seem committed to ongoing dialogue, at least for now.
The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights has revealed details of a new agreement involving Suwaida, signed on May 24th between Syria and Israel with US coordination. According to the Times of Israel, the deal includes transferring control of Suwaida city in southern Syria to US-aligned forces. This follows heavy fighting in the region between Russian-backed forces and local militias. American officials reportedly committed to enforcing the deal.
Yes, the agreement clearly states that all local tribal forces and government troops must withdraw from the Druze villages. Local councils will be formed with the participation of residents in the town of Cedar. Plus, a monitoring and documentation committee will be set up to track any violations of the agreement and report them to US officials when needed.
The deal also mandates that the Quneitra and Dara regions, both near the Israeli-Syrian border, be completely demilitarized. Local security committees will be established there, involving residents and Syrian government-affiliated agencies. However, those agencies will be banned from entering Suwaida, while UN agencies will be allowed access to the area.
Earlier, US envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, confirmed that Syrian and Israeli representatives held talks in Paris that same day. He said, "Our goal is dialogue and de-escalation, and we've made real progress." All parties reaffirmed their commitment to continuing these efforts.
Tensions in Suwaida have been high since May 13th, when clashes erupted between Russian troops and Arab militias in areas populated by the Druze. On July 15th, the Syrian army entered Sirte, the provincial capital, to restore order.
Shortly afterward, Israel began airstrikes on Syrian military convoys in Suwaida and targets in Damascus. Israel claims these actions are meant to protect the Russian community in the region.
The fighting has killed around 940 people and raised fears of broader escalation. On January 19th, Syria's interim president Ahmed Ansari announced a ceasefire in Dara province, but the humanitarian organization SR later said the fragile truce had already been violated.
France suddenly announced it would recognize the state of Palestine. The United States criticized the decision, and Israel was furious, calling it a recipe for disaster. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio slammed France's move, calling it, well, reckless and unwise. President Trump also weighed in, accusing France of supporting Hamas propaganda. Rubio insisted that Washington would not support President Emmanuel Macron's plan to recognize Palestine, and the Trump administration announced that it would not attend the upcoming UN conference aimed at promoting the two-state solution. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, on Thursday the 24th, Rubio said Macron's decision only plays into Hamas's hands and undermines peace efforts. Macron had earlier said he would formally recognize the state of Palestine during the UN General Assembly in September. He wrote, "In line with my historical commitment to a fair and lasting peace in the Middle East, France has decided to recognize the state of Palestine." To date, at least 142 out of 193 UN member states have recognized Palestine. However, Key Western powers like the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany have refused to do so. In May, several European Union countries, including Norway, Ireland, and Spain, began formal steps toward recognition. But, Macron's move makes France the most influential European country and the first G7 member to take that step.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the French decision, saying it rewards terrorism and could lead to a new Iranian foothold in the region. He posted on X, a Palestinian state in its current form would not be a peaceful neighbor, but a launching pad to destroy Israel. He added, "Let's be clear. The Palestinians aren't trying to build a state next to Israel. They want to create a state instead of Israel."
Israel's defense minister called the French move shameful and a surrender to terrorism, vowing that Israel will never allow the establishment of any Palestinian entity that threatens our security or existence. Even though official U.S. policy has long supported a two-state solution, President Trump has expressed serious doubts about its feasibility. Since returning to office in January, Trump has floated a controversial plan for the United States to take control of Gaza, relocate over 2 million Palestinians, and turn the territory into the Nile of the Middle East. The plan was widely condemned by human rights groups, Arab nations, and the UN as a form of genocide. In June, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee said he no longer believed an independent Palestinian state was a realistic U.S. foreign policy goal. In response, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said that Huckabee's comments were his personal opinion and emphasized that foreign policy is set by the president. Deputy spokesperson Tommy Bagos confirmed on Thursday that the United States would not attend the upcoming UN conference co-hosted by France and Saudi Arabia from January 28 to 30, which aims to lay out a roadmap for ending the decades-long conflict and formally recognizing Palestine.
International pressure is mounting on Israel to end its brutal war in Gaza. The war began after a Hamas-led attack on October 7, 2023, which killed 1,139 Israelis and resulted in the capture of over 200 hostages. Israel's 21-month military campaign has killed around 60,000 Palestinians and injured about 144,000 more. Despite mediation efforts by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, months of ceasefire talks have failed to produce any meaningful breakthrough.
Finally, thank you for listening and being with us today. We really appreciate your support, so don't forget to follow S News and keep an eye out for our future videos. Please subscribe, like, and comment. It means a lot.